Hello, welcome to the Self-Learning Podcast by Dr. Sushma Singh. Let us start discussion on Unit 16, Intra-Local Government Relationship, Ruler. The 73rd and 74th Amendments have introduced major structural changes in local governance. Local government institutions had hitherto remained restricted to performing agencies functions on behalf of the state governments, and that too not on a consistent basis. Initiative at the local level in terms of policy planning had been conspicuously lacking. Frequent supersessions, regular elections, inadequate devolution of powers and functions, and the most crippling factor of all, inadequate resources, had rendered local units ineffective institutions of self-government. Besides, confusion has prevailed regarding the number of tiers, with the Balwant Rai Mehta Committee proposing 3 and the Ashok Mehta Committee advocating 2 Mandal Panchayats and Jila Panchayats. The new amendment has gone with the former argument in this respect, that is, a 3-tier arrangement has been settled for, and 29 items have been specified in the 11th schedule, in respect of which the state governments have the opinion or choice to delegate functions to local governments, along with the commensurate authority and resources as per stipulations in this regard by the state legislature and the state finance commission, as commission system has been provided for each level of jurisdiction, which act as a conduit for sharing information and expertise between tiers, which in fact would be vital for effective grassroots planning and envisaged in the 73rd Constitutional Amendment. Though the Constitutional Amendment is salient on the subject, committees have always been functional in all tiers. Though there is no definite provision in any of the state acts for committees at the village and samiti levels, all state acts provide the committees at the Parishad level except Haryana. At the village panchayat level, the number of committees, their structure, scope and functions vary from state to state. Committees are constituted for dealing with specific functional subjects, but they may also cut across jurisdictions, as the beneficiary committee associated with the Gram Sabha in Andhra Pradesh. Except for Andhra Pradesh and Maharashtra, all states have provided for committees at the Samiti level. In Andhra Pradesh, a Mandal Panchayat could constitute a joint committee with other local authorities for a joint purpose on its own initiative of, if one so required by the government of the state. In what manner and to what extent the instrumentality of committees is utilized to collate expert information from relevant government and non-government sources will depend on the arrangements worked out in this regard in different states. As per particular or specific requirements and constraints, political constraints or pertaining to resources more possibly. However, the committee system opened up tremendous opportunities for intra-tier as well as interjurisdiction coordination or cooperation, which would prove immensely beneficial for the concreted rural-urban development. Also, to what extent local governments are developed as institutions of self-governance would depend on the history in or of the state in this regard and the conventions and traditions in this respect. As for example, certain states have followed the democratic norm better than the others, such as Karnataka, Kerala and West Bengal, Madhya Pradesh, and some have preferred rather to observe provisions to breach, as Bihar and Uttar Pradesh and most other states. In this unit, we will be discussing the intra-tier local government relationships in the context of planning, responsibility and implementation. Now let us discuss the point Gram Sabha and Gram Panchayat. The 73rd Constitutional Amendment has prescribed a three-tier system of panchayats for all states which have a population of more than 20 lakhs, which means in each case there shall be panchayats at village, intermediate and district level. The Gram Sabha is the most important institution where people's participation is set to evolve. Previously, where the Gram Sabha existed, it functioned as the prime association with the status of a body corporate, with perpetual succession and a common seal, vested with the authority to sue or be sued in its corporate name, of acquiring, holding or transferring property and of entering into contracts. After the amendment, the Gram Panchayat had assumed that status. However, the Gram Sabha still retains considerable authority, as it is required to meet periodically and give its recommendations and suggestions to Gram Panchayat, which carry enough weight to ensure due consideration. The interconnections between the two bodies is also ensured by the fact that the chairperson of the Gram Panchayat presides over the meetings of the Gram Sabha. In most states, the Gram Sabha gives a credible opinion on the annual administration reports, the annual statement of accounts and audit reports. Besides, the Gram Sabha is an indispensable instrument for bringing about or ensuring social solidarity, organizing and managing volunteer groups, active with the jurisdiction for various purposes, such as disaster management, family planning, gender justice, and so on, and acting in tandem with the government in identification of beneficiaries for development programs, overseeing distribution of funds for welfare programs, where such distribution is to be monitored and there is no specification regarding the instrumentality. Even otherwise, the cooperation of the Gram Sabha is sought on almost all the occasions. However, differing views have been expressed in the 10th Plan 2002 to 2005-7. In the chapter on poverty alleviation, the 10th Plan articulates that only ceremonial functions have been given to Gram Sabha. The powers and functions of Gram Sabha need to be enlarged to give them effective powers of implementation and monitoring of development plan. There is a declaration that the social audit of all development programs by the Gram Sabha would henceforth be made mandatory. There is a proposition that the committee system, which has been adopted in many states to facilitate a more participative decision-making process in the panchayats, should be incorporated in the state panchayat acts. The powers entrusted to the Gram Sabha in the Schedule 5 areas could be entrusted to Gram Sabha in non-scheduled areas as well. Schedule 5 of the Indian Constitution provides for special provisions with regard to administration of regional having tribal population. Uplift of tribal population through the policy aimed at their specific concerns is the main agenda of the administration in these regions. Now let us discuss the next point, connectivity through membership. Regarding intra-tier connectivity through membership, the Constitution Amendment Act has left the manner of representation of the chairperson, the Gram Panchayats and the intermediate panchayats at successive higher stages, that is the intermediate and district panchayats, to the discretion of the state governments. In Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra, there is no representation of the chairpersons of the village panchayats in the panchayat at the intermediate level. In the case of Karnataka, Himachal Pradesh and Rajasthan, there is provision for representation of 1/5 of the chairpersons of the village panchayats in panchayats at intermediate level by rotation for 1 year. In case of Tamil Nadu and Haryana, there is provision for election of chairpersons of village panchayats equal to 1/5 of the total elected members of the panchayats by rotation at the intermediate level. Punjab has adopted more or less the same pattern as far as representation of the chairpersons of the panchayats at the intermediate level in the panchayat at the district level is concerned. Except for Gujarat and Maharashtra, all states have provided for representation. In Andhra Pradesh, the Rajasthan, they are treated as permanent invitees. In case of Tamil Nadu, the restriction is that only such number of chairpersons as shall be equal to 1/5 of the total number of elected members will be represented at the district level. Regarding representation, MP and MLAs at the successive tiers in panchayats who opted within its jurisdiction as well, the decision rests with the state legislature. Now let us wind up the session, and thank you very much for engaging yourself with a self-learning podcast.